One guy wrote several emails to me, all of which were approximately 1,500 words each. And I had to, keep going back and doing this, answering his queries. But then what I do when I've helped them, I say to them, is there any chance you might put a review up on Amazon? And probably 40% of them do that because you've helped them out. This guy, just this, he goes on and on. He just gives me such a hard time. I'm amazed at the number of fawning reviews made of this book. Are we all reading the same version? Pants as an adjective has been redefined. So then what he did was he discovered the US version was for sale on the Amazon site too. So he jumps back into the US version and goes, pants again. He hasn't even read it. Smelly, not a good book in paperback, so doubt it will be any better in hardback. Perhaps I'm just envious that JR gets paid a load of loot for idle twitterings in his word processor. And he gets himself properly worked up about this stuff. Now, if I hadn't had the success with it, I would be sitting thinking, that's not very nice, But that's what happens to an extent within social media. And that's why people are very often kind of scared of social media. And I'll come on to some of these examples then afterwards. How am I for time? And when did I start? Okay. So, this stuff goes on. I'll come on to this in a second because the theory behind all of this is they are going to be doing this about you anyway. You cannot ignore this stuff. If you have any type of a business of any size out there, arguably this is personality driven, so you stick your neck out a wee bit more, but any business is fair game on the internet for either praise or people slagging you off, and you have to just accept it. You cannot just hide away from all of this. It is simply going to happen. So social media allows you to get out there and get a following of people who would then be offended by this. And you'll note that 0 out of 7 people found the following review helpful. Those are people generally who will have bought the book, who will have seen the stuff that I do, who will hopefully have had something beneficial from me, and that you can then call upon to help you. So if something goes wrong, within a social media environment, you will find people then jumping to your, if it happens on a forum, if somebody's read the book and perhaps you've answered an email to them, they'll really jump to your defense if somebody that comes on and says, hey, he's a chancer, I can't believe he did this, and it's a ridiculous book, it's a rubbish book, or I bet he never did it, or the course wasn't very long. People write all sorts of guff from that. Totally not true. They might stuff like, the course that he did was a very short course, and he seemed to be able to, one of the par 3s was only 80 yards long. Complete lie. Complete lie. Just totally fabricated. Don't know where he got it from. May have been, he may have thought that that was the case, but that's how much people can get themselves worked up about these things, and you need people on your side. Anyway, so I come back to that thing before. My initial thing was not to sell lots of books. The outcome was list to online sales. And I'll come back to that in a second. So I have all of this list. I've got about 12,000 people on my email list now. Now, the money that I make, and I've done this several weeks in a row in terms of launching through to that list, I can make more money in a week than I will do in a year out of US book sales, UK book sales, and the film rights. And I can make a year's income from all of that is less than I can make in a week if I launch through my continuity product. So what I have done is, and I don't want to get onto this too much, but basically people go into a membership site, they pay me $19 a month, and they stay within that to be part of a forum, to get about 52 odd videos that I've got out there about all the things. Now these are videos taken by me, or by a friend of mine, with a relatively simple camera that we edited ourselves. So the quality is not amazing. But I've built up that profile that I want to be part of you. You seem now, if somebody wants to go, the reality of social media is you cannot expect everybody to like you. It simply won't happen. But some people will want to go to Butch Harmon, they will want to go to the best golf pros in the world. They will want to go to their traditional golf pro. But a lot of people are very frustrated with traditional golf pros. We had a conversation about that earlier on. Some people will think, this guy has a different angle. He went from 100 to 70 within a year. He's kind of like me. He had a normal job when he was doing it. He was, he had a family, he had a daughter. He was trying to balance all of those things. That's much more like me than a golf pro would be. They're thinking that. So I might see what that guy's got. He's given away all of this information. It's a great book. I enjoyed it, and all of those things. So they pay that, and then those people stay in that. We have people that have stayed in there for 13 months now. It's only been going 13 months. But I can keep launching that through to lots of, on a joint venture basis, to people with lots and lots of big lists, and spin all of those things around. That's where the money is. The money is in the sale of those digital products. The digital product that I have, I might spend, for every member that comes in, I might be spending 20 or 30p on video bandwidth, because I host those all myself, rather than doing them through YouTube, because they need to be private, obviously. Whereas I'm getting $19 through for that. Sometimes I'm paying a commission out of 50% within that. But basically, the money you can see in terms of selling that stuff is just a country mile ahead of that. There's no money in that. And any book that you have really out there, as I say, unless you're going to be a Jeffrey Archer or a J.K. Rowling or Rowling, the money is in using the book, and books are actually remarkably easy to write. It sounds daft, but they're remarkably easy to write if you just spend a little bit of time in it, and they can produce huge credibility for whatever your business may be. And I've written a couple of other books as well, which I'll come to. So all of this happened. I used Twitter a lot. I used Facebook a lot. I don't want to go through the stats because Jamie went through all of those before, but you cannot ignore that. These things are happening out there. If I search on Twitter, if I search on Facebook, if I search on Google, people are writing blogs about this book. This stuff is happening. So if I can engage, that's how this all works. It is happening. You can't ignore it. I then started to mess about with LinkedIn. Actually, initially, I messed about with LinkedIn just to try and make some contact through with people that I went to university with. I didn't really understand what it was about. I knew a couple of them were on there. I sort of bumbled through it. LinkedIn now has 80 million people on it. So within this, it's a much more business-like environment. So your businesses will all be able to use different versions of social media. They'll be able to use some of these things. I have two things that I do, as you probably, coffee business consultant and author speaker. Now, I mean author speaker within, that's all within that. I've written 2 books in coffee shops. I speak at a lot of the big coffee shop events. I do consultancy and coaching through to the coffee shop industry. That's kind of the grown-up job, if you know what I mean. That's what I do now. And author of Dream On, The Challenge to Break Power. So people then get hold of me through this. I've actually made, I don't know how many people I've got that friends within that, not a huge amount, but those people in that are very, very business focused. I've got a lot of speaking work off the back of that. So what happened to me was I was trying to make friends with people from school, and lo and behold, people come on and say, can you come and speak at this event, and we'll pay you X amount of money. And you think, yes, I can. That's what I would like to do. That works for me. And you've literally spent, I mean, I spent no time in that. It's just thrown together. But people are really, really starting to use LinkedIn. So if you are trying to expose yourself to professional people, you really, really need to be in LinkedIn, and you need to try and make some good connections on there. You need to regurgitate a lot of those friends that you've had in the past. You don't need to spend a lot of time in terms of putting out lots of information, but I have this fed through from my Twitter account as well. To be honest, I can't even remember how I did that. I'm not a particularly techie person in any way. It sort of happens, and people see my updates through that. But LinkedIn is a very, very powerful thing. So LinkedIn, Twitter, and Facebook have all been hugely beneficial for me. YouTube's very beneficial for me too. And that's kind of the story. So enough of me. What I wanted to do is go through some more Facebook and Twitter examples to give you, an idea of how this can work in the real world with small and large businesses. Now, I know Jamie has touched on a few of these. He's done the Starbucks story. I do a lot of these talks through to coffee shops. I do a lot of these talks through to small businesses and people who think that is not for me. So I wanted to just go through 2 or 3 of these examples. The opportunity is based on the fact that the whole world is changing. People are actually lonely now. One of the reasons as to why we have increasingly moved towards huge social networks is that people are moving all over the place for different jobs. They're not growing up in the town that they were born in. Pubs are closing. They're one of those classic parts of the local community. They're closing at a rate of 3-4 per day. I obviously use that statistic a lot for coffee shops because coffee shops are going like that at the same time as pubs are going like that. So there is this desire to have a community kind of drinking place, which coffee shops can seize. Post offices are closing as well. That sort of little old lady that was out there was able to get that chat within their local sub-post office, now has to go into the town. So these centres of the community are now going. So if somebody moves into the area for a new job, or they have to move or whatever, there aren't these things that they used to do. They aren't going to church anymore to the same extent. They aren't then making all of those friends that they used to be able to do within that. As I say, it's a global economy where now, as I say, people are just being fired all over the world. I'm sure you all have friends and relations and family who are just dispersed. My sister lives in New York, for example, people just live all over the world now, and it's very hard to rebuild those connections. They also very strongly want to go back and drag those friends that they went to school with or university with and continue to have that good, fun, connection with that they don't have when they've got kids and things. And there was a survey done in the States that said basically that people have 0.75 close friends on average. So there are lots of people out there who have got maybe what they might regard as 4, 5, 6 close friends, people that they can have a really close relationship. They can pick up the phone and and sort of have a, have a good chat with about something. I heard a good line the other day that a friend is somebody who will help you to move house. A good friend is somebody that will help you to move a body. I thought that was quite a good line. And I tried to work out how many good friends I've got. And there probably are about 3, which is slightly concerning in terms of that. Look, I'll help you. You've killed somebody. Let's get rid of them. So the principle being, if there are folk like us out there who hopefully have reasonable amounts of friends, that, there are an awful lot of people there with absolutely no friends at all that they would be able to regard as a properly close friend. Now, if that is the case, and you've lost all of those connections, you've got the kids, you're somewhere where you don't believe, somewhere where you don't grow up with, you're maybe divorced or whatever those things. And there are lots of people. We had a barbecue there in the summer, and we invited 2 of the people from just down the road from us, and one of them had not been out in a social event for 2 years, and the other one hadn't been out in a social event for a year and a half. And there wasn't anything massively socially wrong with them. One of them did get wildly drunk and that sort of, we're finally out, and then they had a bit of a row. But basically, they weren't, the Hunchback of Notre Dame. They just literally had lost that connection to have a social environment. Nobody they would regard as a close friend. If that's the case, those people still mean strong personal friendships. Everybody still kind of wants that, whether you've got them or not. And social media provides that for you. And that's why so many weird things happen in social media, like this. People are lonely. So this is Little Wing Pizza. This is a place that's opened in 2 or 3 sites, well, probably 5 or 6 sites in Northern Ireland now. So I just thought this was interesting. They put up, we are now opening in Ballyhackamore. So they're basically saying, this isn't a great tweet or a great post on Facebook. And 13 people bothered to say that they liked that. I thought that was bizarre. It's a wee bit old now. But people are going, they're sitting at their computers in their office and thinking, oh, there's that business that I've been to. And as long as it's a nice business, they're actively taking the time to say, that's great, you're moving close to where I am. That's quite a fundamental shift in terms of how the market might work, that people are bothering to do that. They put out some good tweets too, so they make little, this is a little poem, we have a yummy new pasta dish, but they have a very good and big Twitter following, Facebook following. But they engage a lot, they do lots of engagement, lots of stories, lots of competitions, lots of stories about how they make pizza, poems, daft stuff, and they get a lot of people coming back with all sorts of comments, loads of comments sometimes. We have a yummy new pasta dish, 9 people bothered to like that too. So that's a pizza place. They're using Facebook to get it out there on a day-to-day basis, and they're building their business very, very quickly. This is a friend of mine, actually, that runs a hairdresser's in Bangor. And I used this because Lorraine does she's a very interesting girl, a bit wild, to be honest, and puts up some pretty wild posts. She'll even put up, arguably, whenever there's been a wee bit of rumpy-pumpy at home with her husband. And people are slightly shocked by what she does. But that means that, you either like or dislike. And she gets huge following and has massively changed her business by doing lots of very personal tweets. She has thrown her personality right out there onto Facebook, re-engaged with a lot of people who had moved, who the hairdressing system is an odd one. I was talking to them the other day about this, and people stay within hairdressers for about, I think on average, about 4 years. When somebody starts with a new hairdresser, only apparently 20% of people, when they go to a new hairdresser, stay with that person. So what you're trying to do is, when you get them through, you need to be strongly engaging with them. You need to be presenting yourself as something out there that people don't forget about. So if you become Lorraine's friend and she cuts your hair, you kind of, over a period of time, it's very difficult then to not get your hair cut by her anymore, particularly if she's constantly pushing herself there in front of you. Now, some people will be offended by the very personal posts that she does, but that doesn't matter, because the whole thing about social media is you cannot just be this anodyne thing that doesn't appeal to everybody. You have to be yourself, because it becomes too tiring to not be yourself to an extent. And if yourself is maybe a wee bit edgy, then there are lots of people out there who want that. So as I say, she does these very personal posts. And she's got 621. She's got a lot more than that now. Actually, this is a few months old. But it has really benefited her business, both in terms of getting new customers and also getting old customers to come back. This is what I'm talking about in terms of the conversations are going on out there about your business, good or bad. This is a client of mine, actually, in Northern Ireland, called the Bay Tree. And he noticed, this first came through about 2 years ago. He noticed that on Facebook, somebody had put together a cinnamon scone appreciation society. They make a really good and famous cinnamon scone.